This afternoon session at the Buildings and Cooling Pavilion, and this afternoon we will be talking about driving down carbon in cities, investing in accessible transit and mobility for a sustainable future. We have an introductory presentation from Gabriel Ferancic from TY Lin in Brazil, and then we're lucky to have a keynote presentation from His Excellency Sultan Najamuddin from the Council of Representatives of Indonesia, and then we have a panel discussion with some distinguished speakers from Brazil and around the world. So hopefully it will be an interesting session between now and 4 o'clock. And let me begin by passing the microphone to Gabriel, who will give us a presentation on the key issues that he sees from his perspective.
Thank you very much, Adam. I'm the country manager Brazil for TY Lin. That's a company part of Sidara. So one of the most important challenges that society is changing, not only our planet needs a lot of change, a lot of investment, the aging population presents opportunities and challenges to make the cities more livable and the world more sustainable also. There are new challenges, and the World Health Organization see the mobility as an important part of the challenge of the solutions we need to provide to the cities for the aging population. In Brazil, for instance, we are rising from 30 million inhabitants with 60 plus years old to 50 million people by the year of 2030. So to avoid what we are calling epidemic of inaccessibility on aging population, we require a lot of investment in transport, on urban mobility, on different aspects. The aging population needs to access healthcare, needs to access to proper public services. So there's a lot of special requirements providing proper mobility for specific population that's growing. And of course, we have the historical challenge. In Brazil, we have more than 110 million vehicles registered, and we have congestion, traffic accidents, of course, a lot of greenhouse gas emission, longer commuting time, increased emissions. So the poorest part of the country takes too long on a daily basis commuting from home to work. It's unfortunately, it's very common on the main cities of Brazil, people taking 1 hour, 2 hours getting from home to the works and coming back on the later of the day. There is a lot of energy, a lot of pollution, a lot of wasted time that represents what come negative externalities of this commuting requirement. But we can avoid the necessity of commuting. We need to address this with proper solution. Unfortunately, our cities were not properly designed also. So we have poor people living on the urban area. This is more a Latin America and Asian style and African style of cities that we have very far from the downtown neighborhoods where people live, because the center part of the cities are too expensive to the people live there. So the cost of living is too high for the people living in good neighborhoods with good infrastructure. So the most part of the poor people are living far from their work, and the aging population is part of those problems also. So Brazil has one of the worst traffic in the world, of course, because there are huge cities without providing proper transit systems. And more than half of the people relies on private vehicles as the preferred mode of travel. So more or less half of the people that moves on motorized trips are moving on public transit, and the other half, more than half, is moving on private vehicle. So the problem of the cities get worse, because when the city starts relying on private vehicles, there are no infrastructure that can address this challenge. And of course, the outcome, it's devastating. It's 87 million metric tons of equivalent carbon dioxide being emitted. And this could represent 173 million Brazilian homes, or 174 million flights from New York to London, or 103 million acres of forests to sequester this carbon dioxide emission. So this is a huge, huge problem for sustainability. Mobility requires a lot of energy. Mobility produces a lot of pollution, but mobility is essential for living in the urban areas. So how are we addressing those challenges? We need, first of all, address what we call the base of this pyramid of needs. We need reliable transit systems, public transport. It's an urgent solution. It's not possible to wait for new technologies or for new infrastructures. We need to immediately address reliable transit system in every big city on the world. Not only in Brazil, every developing country requires proper transit systems to address the necessity of commuting of your people. Then we can address short-term solutions, mainly on mixed or hybrid solution. From Sidara, from TY-Lin, we provide a lot of solutions, like middle, short-term solutions, because we know that the long-term for zero emissions maybe takes too long, but we are not up to be just waiting for the final solution. We need to address as soon as possible. So it requires a lot of less infrastructure, providing hybrid solutions, for instance, hybrid vehicles, maybe on biofuels, maybe on ethanol, like we have in Brazil, or even in traditional gas, but we need cleaner system as soon as possible. But without reliable transit system, nobody will commute using public transport system. And of course, at the top of the pyramid, we need to pursue zero emissions using electric or green hydrogen or any technology that is available now or will be available in the near future. The main challenges for electromobility, it's, of course, high upfront capital costs. We need to electrify our city, electrify our fleets, electrify our garages. We need grid capacity and energy supply, a reliable energy grid. We need the deployment of charging infrastructure. So we need to charge electric vehicles on depots that are not yet able to do so. The maintenance and technical training of staff to address the problems of battery life cycle and replacement, because of course there's a lot of challenge of pollution due to the present technology of the batteries, the regulatory and procurement framework, and operational reliability. In few words, we need bus fleets to be operating during the day on traffic general conditions. without outage of energy supply during the operational day, and of course during the night or during the day, recharging those vehicles. Addressing each challenge seems to be feasible, but the reunion of those aspects, it's more challenge than it seems. I will give you an example. So, from Sidara, we are providing design for reliable transit systems, for instance, designing trams systems, and we are part of the National Urban Mobility Studies from BNDES, the National Brazilian Development Bank. We are assessing the 21 largest metropolitan area in Brazil. We have now 180 priority projects, and it's requiring the challenge of 430 billion Brazilian reais in potential investment for sustainable mobility. This could change how our cities moves, how our cities deals with not only sustainability, but also life quality of their people. Moving to cleaner system, from Sidara, we have a lot of rail-based, electric-based mobility projects. We are one of the first consultants company in Brazil structuring the engineering of PPPs on rail mobility. Just some figures. Only in the last 5 years, we provided 308 kilometers of brownfield projects, 315 kilometers of greenfield projects, moving around 8.2 million passengers per day on those lines, on those projects, with around a capital expenditures of almost 100 billion reais in investments. In different cities, São Paulo, Belo Horizonte, Curitiba, Recife, todos, a lot of different cities. And the next example that I would like to share with you is I think the most top-class project of ours, that is the electro-RITS, that's electromobility of Curitiba. Curitiba, it's one of the most famous cities in the world that provides reliable, proper transit systems. The city is designed just aside transit corridors, mainly based on BRT, bus rapid transit, buses corridors. The challenge here is to electrify 1,200 buses spanning around 4 billion reais, providing zero emissions mobility of the entire city of Curitiba. The client of ours is BNDES also, and this project it's under market sounding and will take place on the next months. Okay, Adam, thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the moderation.
Gabriel, thank you so much for that presentation. Framed the challenge really clearly, and also the way in which we can approach solving the problems, and some examples of where that's being done, so that's encouraging to see. And we'll pick up on that further in the panel discussion, where we look at the solutions and how those can be invested in. The next speaker that we have this afternoon is His Excellency Sultan Najamuddin from Indonesia, where he is the chairman of the regional representatives of the Republic of Indonesia, and he will be sharing some experiences from the Indonesian approaches to addressing these challenges. So really looking forward to hearing that, and please, over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah. I need 34 hours to get here from Indonesia. Very long trip. but I'm happy. Thank you for inviting me to speak this forum. Very good venue. Let me deliver my speech and sitting here. Right? Thank you. Let me deliver. I have a very short speech. Thank you. Yeah. Distinguished, Dr. Hala Umar. So I think he's not here, right? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, in Indonesia, the imbalance in the vehicle fleets composition in Indonesia, along with the lack of public transportation and freight or logistic facilities, lead to wasted fuel consumption reaching 79.2 million kiloliter per year, with air pollution emission reaching 30.49 million ton per year, and greenhouse wasted refill with air pollution emission reaching 30.49 million ton per year, and greenhouse gas emission reaching 295.12 million ton of CO2 per year. This was revealed by the Climate Work Foundation last year. This data by we call KPBB, Climate Work Foundation. According to the ambient air quality monitoring system managed by the Indonesian government, almost all major air pollution parameters in Jakarta exceed WHO guidelines and national standard. In Jakarta, in my country, for example, residents spend 51.2 trillion rupiah a year on respiratory and other disease treatment, including those caused by air pollution such as asthma. Meanwhile, GHG emission from road transportation are likely contributing to the increasing intensity of a global disaster marked by the El Nino and La Nina phenomena, including landslide, flood, and storm. Also, the spread of the certain disease like malaria, seasonal change impacting agriculture, such as rising temperature. Serious efforts have been made for quite some time, at least since the implementation of Sustainable Development Agenda recommended by the 1992 World Summit on Sustainable Development held in Rio de Janeiro, and the recommendation of the World Conference on Climate Change since Kyoto Protocol was agreed upon. These efforts are competing with population growth, increasing industrialization, residential expansion, transportation and electricity generation needs, urban and industrial waste management. Carbon reduction in urban areas is expected to solve global GHG mitigation problem. In addition to helping cities address local climate issues and local emission from air pollution. In the transportation sector, the capital city Jakarta has developed integrated transportation and logistic policies by increasing effectiveness and accessibility or mobility for people and goods. or services. The aspect of traffic and transport management is central to this policy, supported by other aspects including clean energy, lower emission technology, emission standard, and legal compliance. This traffic transport management aspect cover the avoidance, shifting improvement strategy for various transportation measures and technologies. Avoidance, shifting, and improvement technology is implemented through policies that avoid technologies, action and policies that are not oriented toward net zero emission, in addition to policy shift and action, as well as improvement in various technologies, material, and policies such as shifting to clean energy, meaning liquid fuel to gas fuel, and most recently to shift to EV adoption from private vehicle to non-motorized mobility such as walking and cycling, as well as mass public transportation have also been implemented. Sorry, this is quite hard. This is complemented by the policy of avoiding irresponsible use and or ownership of a private motor vehicle to and four wheels, with an even plate number policy. Currently, we are preparing electronic paid roads, progressive parking rates, progressive annual taxes, and basic CO2 level vehicle taxes. There's step have had multiplier effort and multiplier effect on other cities in Indonesia. Several cities in Asia Pacific and Global South are even replicating or at least using them as benchmark for developing sustainable mobility policies. Integration of BRT, LRT, MRT, and other mass public transportation, along with logistic transportation with various feeder buses, is oriented toward electrification and development of first or last mile services for both non-motorized and electrified vehicle. This situation is further enhanced by the adoption of digitalization through ride sharing and especially ride hailing, which allows for optimal utilization of various transportation and logistic mode. With the spirit of equal in implementing more ambitious message and action in mitigating and adapting for the climate crisis, Indonesia has started to take concrete steps in urban development, both of physical development and in transforming urban lifestyle to net zero carbon. Lastly, I have my own book. Let me share my idea, and I'll giving you my books, Green Democracy. Yeah, I launched my own book in my country as the third democracy country in the world, one of the biggest, one of the biggest population in the world. We have almost 300 million people, and I'm the youngest speaker in Indonesia Parliament. I was the youngest governor in Indonesia. I was also the youngest Senate in Indonesia. That is why, as the youngest speaker, I really concerned about this part, green environment, green issue. That is why I make my own book, Green Democracy. Thank you, obrigada.
Thank you so much. That was really interesting, and I'm certainly struck by. Thank you. Oh.
Here. I have a problem with my leg. And you also. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that presentation. And I'm certainly struck by the last statement on the slide there, that by transforming people's transport systems, you can transform the way they live. So it's really powerful and impactful change to people's lives. I'm now going to move over to the panel section of the event, whereby we are going to have a panel discussion where we explore some of these topics in more detail, focusing on the practical solutions that exist currently and how we can then implement those through investment and bringing finance to the requirement. And as Gabriel set out, the financial requirements are large, but the benefits are also equally large. So can I invite Gabriel back to the stage, please, and also to be joined by Ricardo Assumpcion, who is EY's Chief Sustainability Officer, Gabriela Azuela, who is the Practice Manager of the World Bank's Energy Sector Management Assistance Program, and then also Luke Upchurch, who is the Managing Director of Communications at C40 Cities. Welcome to the panel, all of you. So we're proposing to have the discussion in 3 rounds of questions where we explore different elements of the challenge. So starting with existing solutions and what's working currently. And I'll put a question to each of you, but obviously the intention is that it's a discussion. So if you'd like to build on any of the other respondents' answers, please just ask for the microphone and add your comments as you wish. So just to begin with, Gabriel, can I turn to you first and ask you about the technical challenges that are involved in retrofitting or building zero-emission transit systems in urban areas?
Well, thank you, Adam. So we need to understand that we can complain about our cities, about history, about poor urban design, but the cities are what they are. So I think the main aspect of it, it's how can we address this challenge. We cannot be naive about solutions. The change of the cities requires a lot of time, a lot of investment, a lot of civil works infrastructure. So I think there are no simple solutions to such a huge challenge. And we need to understand each city, and we need to understand its culture and the context, mainly on developing country, to properly address that challenge.
Thank you, Gabriel. Sorry, did you want to come in? Sorry? No? Okay, thank you. Sorry, moving on. Sorry, if you could pass the microphone to Ricardo, please, Gabriel. From your perspective, what does a successful transition to zero-emission mass transit look like in emerging market economies? And what are the practical solutions that you see being most effective on the ground?
Well, thanks for having me here, Adam, Guilherme. So this is not an easy question. Actually, it's a great question. And a successful transition, we know, to zero-emission mass transit in developing countries, it's about reshaping system around people, access, and affordability, of course. We have a study at EY, it's called the EY Mobility Consumer Index, And interesting because we surveyed around 20,000 consumers across 30 countries. In two major shifts, the takeaways, two major shifts are already in place. The first one, 74% of urban citizens in emerging markets, and here more a Latam perspective, 19 countries in Latam, we can see that they are planning to change to an electrical or hybrid vehicle. So, and the second one is that public trust in shared or mass transit is rebounding. But people demand reliability, safety, and convenience as part of the clean mobility promise. In Brazil, in Colombia, in Chile, we have programs to help population, not only incentive population to use or choose sustainable transportation, but of course, in the end of the day, what we need is the governance from public sector and the leadership of private sector. We are helping a lot of cities in their shift to a more clean transition.
Brilliant. That's encouraging to see there's so much interest and positive engagement with electrification around Latin America. Sorry, I said it's encouraging to see there's so much positive engagement with electrification from your survey. So if you could maybe pass the microphone to Gabriela. I'd like to ask you, what do you see are the most promising innovations in terms of technical or financial models that are helping to enable this transition?
Thank you so much, Adam, and thank you, Gabriel, Adam, for the invitation. We're very happy, honored to be here and excited about the conversation. Well, first of all, when you ask questions about innovation at the World Bank, we have been, I would say, a bit not conservative, but focused on the foundational aspects. We always say that innovation, especially in electric mobility, is not necessarily focused on the technology at the beginning. Although the technology is there, the electric vehicles, electric buses are there, and the batteries, right? But it's really more focused on how innovation is basically more how countries and cities can transform their mobility structure. And this has a lot to do with policy, regulation. It has a lot to do with the way you manage the systems, the way you operate your systems, and the kind of PPPs, public-private partnerships, or contractual agreements that you can deploy. You know? So let me focus on the three, I would say, foundational elements that will kick off the markets and also drive innovation. In the recognition that in Latin America, we already have a small market, no? And there are my colleagues in transport, and I have to confess, being candid, that I'm an energy person, not a transport. I'm an energy specialist, not a transport specialist. But my colleagues in transport always mention this, that in Latin America, you have already 70 cities in about 12 countries that have deployed successfully, effectively e-mobility. So this is happening. It's a little bit fragmented, and there are already 6,000 e-buses running in Latin America. So it's happening at the beginning, but I think there are lots of things that we need to do to innovate, to really trigger the markets, and then allow more creativity, more entrepreneurs to come to the market. No? So let me mention three things. First, talking about our projects, the World Bank projects, and especially how we are focusing on business models. Then let me talk a little bit about enabling infrastructure, and this is closer to my heart because I'm an energy person, so this has a lot to do with the grid. And then talk a little bit about capacity, institutional capacity, technical capacity. So on innovative, and I would say even tailored business models, I really would go to the basics, because as we know, there is still an incremental cost between an e-bus and a diesel bus, or an diesel car and an electric vehicle, no? So you need to close that incremental cost in one way or the other. So in some of our projects, we are focusing on this closing this viability gap through credit lines with financial institutions. We have now what we call financing gap model, specifically in the project we have with the city of Sao Paulo. that has a target of introducing 3,000 buses. This will make Sao Paulo perhaps the largest, the city with the largest e-mobility program, which I think is very interesting. But the model there is very basic. It's closing the viability gap to attract the best operators, private sector participation, etc. So it's very, very basic from a model point of view, but it's, I think, in my opinion, will be effective in triggering and starting up the market, right? Then we have projects in El Salvador and in other places focusing on supporting BRT systems. And it's basically support to municipalities. The municipalities will directly invest in the e-buses, but then they will lease the fleets to operators. So here we are focusing more on the leasing and making sure that you lower that risk, right? And finally, I also wanted to talk about the vehicle to grid, which is not, could be e-buses, but also electric vehicle fleets. And this is a little bit more futuristic. We are seeing vehicle to grid in California, in Australia, in Europe, but not so much in Latin America. And this takes me to my second point, which is the enabling infrastructure. No? You need to have, of course, the charging stations, but this really will depend on whether you have efficient utilities, electric utilities, in the distribution segment. And most of the utilities in Latin America, many are not financially sustainable, and the grid is a grid that has a high level of losses. So first you need to have sustainable systems with utilities that can actually enter into agreements with these fleets to have not only the injection from the fleets, which is a simple connection, but also a bidirectional flow of electrons, which can be very beneficial for the fleets. They can earn on their net billing or other kinds of policies, they can earn money, right? And this makes the case for electric vehicles and buses, the economic case, much more sustainable. And of course, on the energy charging, electricity charging, and enabling infrastructure, there is a lot we're doing, and I could speak about this for hours, but I don't want to hijack this thing. Finally, but we can deepen into it, Adam, if you want to talk about it. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we're very focused on institutional capacity, and we are deploying project preparation facilities, specifically with Caixa. We have a project with Caixa that's quite big, to make sure that the capacity at the municipality level is strong, right, to be able to deploy the programs. So let me stop here.
No, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that. They're really comprehensive answers, some really interesting points in there, and there are different delivery models for different situations. And I'm interested with the vehicle to grid model that you suggested, whether that has the benefit of helping to stabilize the grid as well as helping to reduce the cost of electrification of transport. So it can be really quite a good dual benefit there potentially. Yeah. So perhaps now if I can turn to you, Luke, and perhaps if you could just tell us a little bit more about C4 cities are doing in this area, and particularly obviously you're helping build capacity around the world, working with the mayors and different municipalities. So really probably at the forefront of a lot of this thinking in different places around the world.
Yeah, thanks, Adam, and pleasure to be here. Thanks everybody for bearing with the heat. I did hear Anatoni say yesterday that she would turn the air conditioning on if we reached an agreement in the first few weeks or first few days. So, you know, it's hoping. So yes, I'm the managing director of communications for C40. For those who don't know, C40 is a global network of around 100 cities, the big mega cities across the world. We make up about 23% of the global economy. And the work of C40 is working with mayors in those cities to help them be as ambitious as they possibly can on their climate policies. And we do that in a number of ways. We work with them on capacity building, technical ability. So we have a range of experts that sit within C40, work on a whole range of climate policy areas. And we bring mayors together in their teams to try and learn from each other, info exchange, and and improve their ambition. So we are an organization at the vanguard of climate work at the city level. And the whole point of what we try to do is to get mayors to beg, borrow and steal ideas from each other so that they can improve and go forward with more ambitious climate policy. And it's a model that's working. So our cities, we have 97 in that network. Three quarters of those cities have peaked their emissions already. We're going about 5 times faster than the global average in reducing emissions. And this comes from their ambition, but also the technical work and being able to identify the areas that we need to prioritize to bring those emissions down. So yeah, the heart of it is that info exchange. In terms of the work that we do in clean air or in the transport sector, we try to focus that down firstly at a political level, working with our mayors to make this an interesting and engaging and acceptable issue to their residents. So we don't often talk about carbon emissions per se. We will talk about clean air, healthier streets, healthy living. These are the ways in which mayors need to speak to their residents so that they can buy into the policies, which is increasingly important as we're seeing a back push against climate ambition and the disinformation and misinformation that a lot of our mayors are faced with. But our approach is working. So we've seen about an 8% reduction in toxic air in C40 cities since the beginning of the pandemic, which is a fantastic figure. We just had the Local Leaders World Forum in Rio just as we walked in the door for Belém, where we had around 300 mayors together. 50 of them came together, signed a new clean air accelerator, which is committed to improving the air and saving 450,000 lives by 2040. So ambitious things being done by mayors. In terms of their priorities, so hence our priorities, it's what you would expect. So it's the electrification of private vehicles, of fleet vehicles. It's working to improve walkways and cycle paths. These are issues that mayors have control of. They're empowered to work on. And we help them learn from each other as best as possible to see what works in one city, see how we can apply it to another.
I think that's brilliant to hear, and such, obviously making a big difference in the cities with which you're working. Thanks very much, and that concludes the first round of the discussion. I'm mindful of time, and I'm also mindful that Gabriel, you've got to be somewhere else exactly at 4 o'clock, so we don't want to keep you. So what I'll try and do is just blend a little bit of the next 2 rounds of discussion into one more round. So if I can just pass the microphone back to Gabriel. And we want to really talk about how we go through the practicalities of enabling that transition to these electrification of transport, and also the financial aspects. And obviously you represent a large engineering business working a lot with different municipalities and governments. What do you see as being the key aspects of how you can work most effectively to get projects developed through the planning process and then financed?
Okay, there is a little bit of obvious answer to that question, that we need to provide infrastructure that's more desirable for the people than private vehicles, because there's a lot of information that people want to have these own private electrical vehicles. Eventually, every corner city will have the power grid available to recharge the vehicles, but we need to provide proper transit infrastructure that people can rely on them, and then it's sustainable, zero emission. So the focus of our new program with the BNDES, it's providing mainly electrical BRTs, electrical trams, and electrical railway systems, subways or commuter lines. So, and we need to improve the design, There's this mantra from Sidara that we design infrastructure for people. It seems to be obvious, but when you try to really reach people, and if you had the demand, if you have the people desiring use this, part of the financial gap, it's closed by the users, the commuters.
Fantastic, thank you. And just moving on then to that financial aspect, and obviously there are different ways of delivering these projects. Gabriela mentioned around PPP as one measure. Ricardo, can you sort of talk about your experience of how some of these projects are financed and the ways that you see emerging at the moment?
Yes. First, what we are trying to do at TY is not focus on decarbonization, but focus on a new way of mobility, more cost-effective, with side effect of decarbonization. So this is how we can scale the solutions. Otherwise, we'll be stuck at where we are. And another important data from one of our studies shows that it's a CEO Outlook Pulse, and we surveyed with many, more than 2,000 CEOs globally, and 7% of them says that policy uncertainty is one of the 3 barriers for clean projects or a green economy or decarbonization. So this is important to set. So what we are trying to do first, try to mobilize the policymakers to set standards and to create a positive environment to invest, to receive investment. This is important to have frameworks designed for that. Second, build coalitions. So what we are trying to do is put all the stakeholders together on the same way. This is maybe the best path that we have today to implement projects. And third, there is a lot of small projects, proof of concept. So how to scale up all of them? I believe that this COP is putting a spotlight on the implementation agenda. So the new diplomas will be action. And I really believe that countries like Brazil, because the problem is global, but the solutions is more local. Brazil, for example, we have the ethanol. So we have a huge potential of biofuels. Probably for long haul, this is a solution. Different for urban city where electrification is probably the best solution. So right now, we have different situations, for example, in Chile, Colombia, and Mexico. But in the end of the day, what we need is to put everybody on the same page, policymakers and the private sector together, understand that investing in decarbonization is cost effective, and in the future we'll have this positive collateral side effect of decarbonization.
Fantastic. That's very well put. That this is a benefit of making people's lives better as well as helping to address climate change. You raised a couple of points there around the policy framework and that never hold 2 microphones next to each other. It's a rookie mistake. But can I just pick up on that policy point, because you also mentioned that, Gabriela, when you were talking about the importance of having a stable regulatory policy environment. How does the World Bank engage with countries and regions to help put that sort of framework in place to enable you to invest in their transport infrastructure?
Thank you, Adam. So this is always important for us, no? Because as I mentioned before, policy and regulation is foundational. Without predictable and transparent and clear incentives and standards, etc., it's not possible to attract private sector participation into any sector, particularly this sector. So that's super important for us. At the bank, by the way, we're the World Bank group. So we have the World Bank and the International Finance Corporation and MIGA, who's an entity that supports risk mitigation. And we, the 3 institutions, have now merged our knowledge units, by the way. So the way we support our clients now is very much integrated in the sense that we bring the perspectives of the public sector and the private sector together. But we do support our clients with our technical assistance funds and other types of financing, development policy financing, etc., on how to introduce appropriate policy regulation and standards, technical standards at the appropriate time, right? And And that you have a usual classification of policies in transport, the same we have in energy. It's important to coordinate them well, especially when it comes to electric mobility. But of course, you have your climate ambition, your climate change, your national climate change laws, your NDCs, etc. At the World Bank, we are very focused. We've been very focused on decarbonization. We are shifting a little bit as well. No, our colleague from EY was saying this, that we're trying to look into how to link the climate ambitions of countries that are expressed in their NDCs with their smart development at the end of the day. And smart development is programs and initiatives that are cost efficient, cost effective. No, you guys in transport always talk about this framework, no? The what is it? The shift and improve, avoid, shift, improve. No, that is a very good framework, no, for introducing how to introduce policy. Now, of course, say the coordination is very important for us. And one thing that I wanted to mention in regulation that is essential for e-mobility, and it's not even futuristic, is the tariff, is electricity tariff. Because what is going to be the cost to the cost of connection and the cost of buying the electricity. And there are many programs out there and regulations, but the time of use tariff is very important. And here in Brazil, you have a time of use tariff. That's a bit basic, but by the way, Brazil is very sophisticated in terms of electricity market. Perhaps one of the most sophisticated markets, the most sophisticated markets in Latin America, certainly, but also globally, is the Brazilian market, because you have a retail market here. And that means that you can have, you eventually will be able to have this exchange of electrons between electric fleets and the grid, right? So you are closer than anyone else in Brazil to do this. But of course, time of use tariff, that's the one I wanted to emphasize. And also the fact that you need to combine your policies smartly. Fiscal and financial incentives, contractual design, the way you design PPPs. Chile has been very successful in its e-mobility, as you know, mainly because they have introduced a very good contract design, coupled with fiscal incentives, tax reductions, and all sorts of things from the fiscal point of view. So you don't need it all. You don't need the whole toolbox and sandbox, right? You need to combine 2 or 3 things to make sure that that is effective in deploying at that point what you need to deploy. Mexico has no time of use tariffs, so they need to wait, right? So those are
thank you so much. That's so interesting. And you know, speaking from the UK perspective, we know that the time of use tariff that we have and our smart meters really transforming electrification of heating and also of transportation. So yeah, wherever it can be done, it really has a big impact. Thank you so much for that. Luke, if I could ask you to perhaps close the session now. And I'm struck by what you said in your previous answer around how mayors have to talk to their citizens in ways that are different to how we might talk in a technical way about forecasting carbon footprint and so on. Can you maybe expand a little bit more about what you see as being really successful in that area in terms of what strikes a chord, what people are looking for, and what are the keys to success there?
Sure, happy to do that. The key really to transport and talking about transport with residents in cities is making it a health issue. So it's not about being a climate issue, it's about cleaner air for your kids, for yourself, and that's how we get residents to support things like ultra-low emission zones. And we have countless examples of mayors being able to do that. Probably the best example I have is the Mayor of London, Mayor Khan, who extended the low emission zone in London. It's now the biggest ultra-low emission zone in the world. He had a lot of pushback in the media and in disinformation circles because of the ambition of that policy. But by reframing it, and C40 helped him do this, we gave him the tools to do this, by reframing it as an issue that was about improving air quality for children and residents, by bringing in voices of faith leaders, people that had agency in the community, rather than it just coming from a mayor, it made a big difference, and he was returned for an historic 3rd term with an increase in his majority, and London now has the biggest ULEZ in the world. I wanted to also pick up on a point you made just quickly on this being a COP of implementation. And as I mentioned, we had the Global Local Leaders Forum just before we came here, where mayors from across the world came to that, very conscious of this being a COP that needed to see delivery, not just negotiation. So the mayors have come, we have a mayor delegation here, and they've come and they're talking about their yearly offer of action. And that yearly offer of action is what they're committing to doing in 2026. So trying to help this whole process speed up. So instead of talking about things in 5 years or 10 years, it's in the next year that mayors are committing to. And a number of mayors were able to commit to clean air commitments, which as soon as I want to show you them on my phone, they've disappeared. Yeah. But essentially, we have mayors all over the world. Rio is introducing its first local low emission zone next year. In Shenzhen, they're trying to take the number of electric vehicles on their streets up to 1.7 million next year. Mumbai is moving its electric bus fleet up to 85% by next year. We see similar things happening in cities all around the world, and it's that ambition and that drive from mayors to really make a difference quickly that I think makes this such an exciting area and an area for collaboration amongst everyone on this panel.
Wonderful. What a really positive note to finish on, and yeah, really encouraging to see that there's so much happening and that the mechanisms are putting in place, and the financial case is strong, and more importantly the fact that it improves people's wider quality of life and health, as well as addressing the carbon impact of transportation. So thank you so much, all of you, for your contributions this afternoon. Really interesting discussion. I'll let you get away now, Gabriel. I can see you're itching to go. And I just would like to thank you once again, and really appreciate the insights that you've shared with us all this afternoon.